Okay, let's dive in. What if having, more freedom, more choices in life actually makes us feel less secure, maybe more disconnected?
Right. That's kind of the surprising core of Zygmunt Bauman's idea of liquid modernity, based on the sources we looked at.
Yeah, so our mission here is to really unpack what liquid means in this context and how it contrasts with what came before it and maybe see its ripple effects on our lives.
Exactly. And to really get liquid modernity, you first need a picture of its opposite, which the sources call solid modernity.
Solid modernity. Okay.
Think of that as, well, an earlier time built on stability. Structures felt more fixed.
Like lifelong jobs, stable institutions, that kind of thing.
Precisely. And clearer social roles, too.
Yeah.
Life paths seemed, more predictable, more coherent. There were definite anchors holding things down.
Okay, so liquid modernity is where those anchors start to dissolve.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
According to Bauman and these sources, it's really the signature of our time now. Everything
Mhm.
feels much more shifting, uncertain, unstable even.
So change isn't just something that happens sometimes, it's constant.
It's the background hum, yeah. Structures, whether they're social, institutional, maybe even our own plans for the future, they can just feel much more fluid, temporary.
And we're navigating this sort of individually, feeling a bit adrift.
Often, yes. That's a key part of it. It sounds pretty intense, and the sources really dig into what this constant flux does to us as individuals. There's this fascinating paradox they point out.
Right, the paradox of freedom.
Yeah. On the surface, it looks like incredible freedom.
Yeah.
You've got more choice than ever about who you are, your lifestyle, your path.
Wagner's hat.
There's a catch. This freedom, it comes with a pretty heavy burden because when you have fewer stable reference points, fewer clear societal scripts to follow.
But the responsibility falls entirely on you to build your own identity constantly.
Exactly. You have to
Mhm.
construct it, maintain it, pretty much all on your own.
So instead of just feeling liberated, it can actually be, well, exhausting or lead to insecurity, anxiety, maybe?
Definitely. Identity becomes this demanding, like perpetual project. And it's shaped heavily by things like consumer choices, how you curate your image online.
That pressure to always be adaptable, always visible.
Right. It's less like you've built a solid boat and you're sailing it, and more like you're trying to build a boat while you're already out in rough, unpredictable seas.
Wow. Okay. And this liquidity, it doesn't just stop with our own sense of self, does it? The sources say it spills over into relationships.
That's a really strong point they make. Relationships themselves can become, well, liquid.
Meaning, driven more by convenience
Oh,
or individual fulfillment.
yeah, both those. There's even an analogy used, suggesting they can sometimes start to resemble consumer products.
Oof, like easily replaced if they stop satisfying or get too difficult.
That's the idea presented, and technology, especially social media, seems to accelerate this trend, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Reducing complex connections to likes, follows, swipes. It feels like it makes bonds more fragile. Easier to start, but also easier to just end.
It does. And look at the specific example in the sources. Modern dating apps. Tinder, Bumble, those platforms.
Right. Compared to how things worked in solid modernity?
Yeah, back then, maybe you met through established social circles, family, work. There was often a more formal courtship, maybe a stronger societal push towards long-term commitment.
Whereas the apps, they're almost the perfect symbol of this liquid state, aren't they? Connections are fluid, based on profiles, formed fast.
And dissolve just as quickly. A swipe, an unfollow. It mirrors that bigger instability Bauman talks about, just on a very personal level.
Okay, stepping back a bit then, what about the wider picture? The sources touch on political and ethical implications too.
They do, briefly. The idea is that when collective structures, institutions, communities feel less solid, that sense of shared responsibility can weaken.
So individuals are left more alone to figure out complex ethical stuff without clear frameworks.
Kind of, yeah. And that can apparently lead to feelings of alienation, maybe apathy, like the big problems feel too huge or disconnected for one person to tackle.
So if we put it all together, Bauman's concept as presented in these sources, it's really a critique of late capitalism's impact.
I think that's fair to say. It highlights this core tension.
Mm.
We have maybe more individual freedom and choice than ever before.
But it comes hand in hand with more insecurity, more precariousness.
Exactly. The world feels dynamic, sure, but also potentially unstable,
Mm.
emotionally demanding.
It's definitely a lot to think about, this shift from, a solid world to this liquid one and how it reshapes basically everything, identity, relationships, society.
It really does. And maybe that leaves you, the listener, with something to mull over. If everything feels like it's constantly shifting, if your own identity feels like this endless project,
Yeah.
how does that actually shape your experience of freedom? And what does it do to your ability, maybe even your desire, to form those deep, meaningful, lasting connections with other people?